like, you know, when it just opens with seekest thou the road to all that's foul and fair. And it's just immediately, it feels Wicked Witch. It feels like you're going into the woods. You feel like the fucking queen from Snow White after she's transformed has just walked into the room and she's holding a torch and she's like this to you already, and you're like, yeah, it's time to go. And she's not trying to kill you.
Right.
She has an apple and it's not trying to kill you. It's the apple is going to unlock all your inner power. And you're like, bitch, I want that apple.
Exactly.
And I'll protect you from the dwarves if they try to come for you, girl. I got you. Like, let's go. Maiden Mother Crone.
Exactly.
Yo. Hey everybody!
Hi!
And welcome to episode 3 of Spelling the HEKA-TEA with Marcus and Evan. This is our new moon episode, so...
Happy new moon to all who are watching.
Yes, happy new moon. Praise HEKA-TEA, praise the dark time.
Exactly.
Little known fact for those of you who, if you follow HEKA-TEA, and for some reason you don't know this, or if you don't follow HEKA-TEA at all, and here's a little insight. The new moon is actually her feast night. So it's called the Dipnon, or Dipnon. But back in, talking ancient Greece, they would leave out offerings to HEKA-TEA at crossroads, preferably 3 crossroads. And it was left for her and the spirits that accompanied her on her night of wandering to collect those who are passed over, have passed over, or needing passed over and waiting. But a lot of time, these HEKA-TEA feasts or HEKA-TEA suppers were eaten by the poor. And so there was a saying, and the saying is thousands of years old, which just blows my mind. But it's in the words of HEKA-TEA, where she says that the world's poor and needy and hungry and starved get to her feast before she does. And so it's still common, a lot of witches, if they have access to a crossroad of comfort, or if they have a backyard, or just an easy way to leave out offerings, we'll still leave out food, obviously, for the spirits and for HEKA-TEA. But a way you can do this, if you're not able, you live in an apartment, you don't have outside space, whatever, right, is make a donation to like a charity or a food bank. Making any donation, for example, to Palestinians in Gaza, that geographically, the land of Canaan, Asherah, Astarte, also Kibble, HEKA-TEA. She has origins in Assyria and Afghanistan and Turkey, and way before she ever got to Greece. And so making donations to charities like that, or food bank, food drive donations at the grocery store, when it comes up, if you're paying with your card, and it'll be like, do you want to donate to like No Kid Hungry or whatever, do that on a new moon, and say I'm making this donation in the name of Hekatean, I always do $3.
Yeah.
Or $6. Like, I'll do like a multiples of 3, but I'll just tend to just do $3 for her 3 aspects. So that's just a nice way to still do that and make sure it goes to the right place. But yeah, welcome to the show. And this, as promised, is our Agatha episode, our Agatha All Along episode, where we're going to talk about all of the witchy things they got right.
Yes.
Not wrong. We're not really, I mean, there's a couple things where it's like we're going to correct, because obviously it's a fictional show, so there is some fantastical things that happen. So there will be some dispelling of
But we're just basically here to talk about what we, as practicing witches, liked about the show
and felt, and what and of course we want to know from you the same. If you don't know about us, again, this is Spelling the HEKA-TEA with Marcus and Evan. I'm Marcus,
and I'm Evan,
and we are lifelong friends, work colleagues. I'm a critically acclaimed, national, international celebrated author and of queer horror and Pacific Northwest Gothic specifically, and I write mostly about witches, vampires, serial killers, ghosts, etc. And Evan's my editor. Yes. Candy on a Book. And we've just been friends for a long time and practicing witches, and we're in our own little circle and family, and it's just great. Exactly. And we just talk about things, topics, current events, whatever, but from a witchy perspective.
Exactly. We just wanted to have this be a place where we can address all aspects of life through a witchcraft lens.
Exactly.
So if you're into that, stick with us.
Yes.
We are your team.
Yeah. This is just sitting down at the altar, sitting down and having a chat by the altar side, and having a drink.
Exactly.
So get cozy. Cheers. We air every full moon, new moon, and we have special Sabbath and Esbat episodes, which are fun and will continue to be fun. And we'll have recipes called from Delicious Delicious Witch, LOL. So just hang out with us. We're still getting our footing. If you like the video, love it, please share it, subscribe to our channel, and just hang out with us.
Exactly. The more the merrier.
Yeah, the more the merrier. Speaking of, really quick, as you can see, it's not exactly the new moon yet. It's right before American Thanksgiving, but we wanted to make sure this video posted a few days before, because we wanted to address the dietary elephant in the room, which is Thanksgiving. Now, historically, we have what perception of Thanksgiving?
Colonials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The massacres, the natives, and
not great connotation.
No, by no means, and for good reason. But here's some dispelling facts and some fictions and interestings about how there are kind of two different Thanksgivings, and there is a witchy context of looking at the actual feast itself. And this is just to address the guilt that we can feel if you are I'm enjoying Thanksgiving with my family. Am I a racist colonist asshole for taking part in this? And I guess it just depends on how you view it and what part of it and what of it you are celebrating. So, for example, that is all true, although for the Puritans who landed at Plymouth Rock and experienced all this, for them, Thanksgiving would have been, a day of Thanksgiving would have been after there was a serious drought that had lasted for most of the spring and summer, and their crops were wasting away, and they spent 3 days fasting and praying and rains came, and it rained really hard for like a whole week and saved the crops. And then they had what would have been a day of Thanksgiving, and that was not a big feast. That was either minimal eating or, you know, and a lot of prayer, a lot of boring, tedious shit.
Yeah.
And not celebration. The image of what happened got tacked onto it really during the early 1900s. In the Victorians, actually the late 1800s, the Victorians really started taking on this idea of the Puritans and the Indians, and like what it symbolized, and getting back to when America was great, like getting back to when it was better, like, which is still happening.
Right.
But now it's just like they want to go back to like 1953.
Right.
Like, but yeah, it was the same thing. The Victorians were like, Americans were better when they were Puritans. Like, and they started glamorizing the feast that took place was more of like a feast of gratitude amongst the Puritans and the Native Americans for the abundance and the help and assistance and helping them survive through the winter and have an abundance of crops, etc. That got tacked on way back when. And unfortunately, that has now taken over as why we do Thanksgiving.
Right.
But that's not it. So there's actually, when Thanksgiving got celebrated, it was originally celebrated on the East Coast in New England only. In New England only, they had Thanksgiving. And it was because the colonists wanted something to feel connected to their homeland back in England, back in Northern Europe, and the UK, and they wanted to feel something to connect, and they were like, we don't really have any celebrations of our own. And they had Harvest Home. And Harvest Home, I mean, you can explain Harvest Home. It was just a harvest festival. It became popular in like medieval Tudor England, as an actual celebration of the harvest, and the
abundance that you would receive through the year.
Yeah, and your community, your villages got together, and then you maybe would go to church, but then you went home and you feasted. Like, you just feasted on the harvest, and it became Harvest Home and formalized, like we said, during the medieval and Tudor period. Like, that's about when it came to be. But what it was actually based from, though, was just another Christian adoption conversion of pagan pre-Christian feast celebrations, harvest celebrations. Especially the autumnal equinox, like Mabon, as we call it now. Like, so the feast aspect of Thanksgiving, when it became something here, it didn't have anything to do back in like the 1700s, like the late 1700s, when it started becoming a thing in New England. It had nothing to do with acknowledging the Plymouth Rock. It had nothing to do with that. It was literally Harvest Home. Being celebrated. It wasn't until about the Victorians that they tacked on the Plymouth thing as this is what Thanksgiving's based around. It was not. Thanksgiving was a very New England central thing. Very New England. The rest of the colonies, the rest of the country, they did Halloween, depending on where they were, and then they did Christmas, and there was nothing in between. So if you, like in our household, we've always done Thanksgiving. I'm a cook. I love to fucking cook. Like, that is my Super Bowl. I train all year for Thanksgiving. But it never has for me had anything to do with
colonization
or anything like that. It's always been for me something based off of a pagan feast.
Yes.
And so I acknowledge, I mean, my fucking father is native, like I'm native, like I acknowledge, but there is a way to separate the ritual part of it, the feasting, the food, the gathering part of it, from what the Victorians and then the American Thanksgiving movement. It's actually the history of Thanksgiving and how it became what it became politically and as a federal holiday is actually really
very interesting. Yeah.
I suggest Home for the Holidays, the history of Thanksgiving. You can find it on History Channel Vault on Amazon. It's amazing. It came out in 1997 when History Channel was making all their holiday, documentaries like Christmas Unwrapped, the history of Christmas, and of course the haunted history of Halloween, which is amazing. That came out in like 95, 96. So it's really fascinating, but the feasting part of it, you don't need to feel guilty about, especially if you're a witch. It's already, if you're a pagan, it's already in your culture. It's already in your history. It's already in your practice. Like if you do celebrate the Wheel of the Year, or you do celebrate any type of witch festivals or pagan festivals, this is already part of it.
Yeah.
So just celebrate Harvest Home. If you want to call it Thanksgiving, call it Thanksgiving. But otherwise, call it Harvest Home, or just call it, Friendsgiving, or Harvest
celebration.
Harvest feast, dinner, celebration, whatever. Just
call it whatever you want to call it, but don't feel guilty.
Don't feel guilty. Acknowledge the bullshit. And acknowledge what happened, and obviously, acknowledge what the government side of it tacked onto it, and the Victorians tacked onto it, and because it's there, and it's the history, the mythology of it, there's no way around it, because then it ends the whole government purpose of why they got involved to make it a national holiday during the Civil War to unite the country and all this bullshit. It was not about that before the Civil War. It wasn't about that before the Victorians tacked it on there.
Yeah.
So, but now it's on there, and that's now the mythology of its history, even though it's not. So, the truth. So just acknowledge it, but enjoy that turkey, enjoy that ham, enjoy those mashed potatoes, enjoy the stuffing, enjoy all of it and enjoy it so much that you have to wear stretch pants.
Exactly.
So there you go.
Yeah.
Moving on
to without further ado, the true point of this episode.
Yes.
The cultural sensation that is Agatha all along.
Worship Agatha all along.
Yes.
Oh my fucking God. Oh my God.
And I come to you saying that as a person who does not give a wet donkey fart about comic books, Marvel,
it's
DC,
true. It's true.
Any of that shit. And I loved it from start to finish. Because I do give a shit about witchcraft.
Exactly. And they did it right.
They did. I was hard-pressed to find a moment that I said to myself, oh, that's incorrect.
Yeah.
Which growing up as a witch, you may get a couple of moments in movies that are correct, but it's, 3 instances out of the 20 will be correct. And so to have a show that you're sitting there and you're watching, and everything seems true to you. I never thought that I would see that in my lifetime. And
No.
that's just why I adore this show.
And now, of course, it's a comic book show. It's a fictional show. It's fantastical.
Of course.
Like, obviously, it's more what they got right in terms of what you're watching, and you're like, they just got everything right. It's more metaphorical in terms of, or allegorical, excuse me, in terms of what it is. Like, obviously, there is not, you can't summon an actual door that opens the Witch's Road.
Exactly.
But the Witch's Road is the journey. It is the path that every witch, every young witch embarks on.
Called to.
Is called to. When you say, I am going to embrace this, you begin your journey on the Witch's Road.
Yeah.
And so we're going to break all of this down and we got pages on legal pad.
Yes. And you know what I actually love about it is that, you know, each person and each element in the show like goes through different like trials and journeys, which I think is a great allegory for being a witch in real life, because like one person's witch's road is not going to look like the next person's witch's road. And I think that's a really important like topic of discussion. You know?
Yes. And I think first and also, couple of things, as you can see from episode 1, things look different. Cameraing is different, but we're still in the dining room.
Yes.
And there are no big mics. So for the foreseeable future, we are going to be in the dining room. We actually kind of really like it out here, so we might just stay out here. It gives that like view, topical conversation set situation. So, you know, we can pretend there's an audience, like looking and laugh track and blah, blah, blah. But also, again, no mics. So we're just recording as through the device. So if you hear cars, sorry. Hopefully though, like, I mean, it seems like it's been pretty good, but if you hear cars, again, we're in my dining room. We don't have the big mic set up at the moment. There was just some issues with that. And, yeah, so apologies if you hear cars. Anyway, back to Agatha.
Back to Agatha.
So first and foremost, 3 years.
Yes.
Wanda, after Wanda's bubble and everything over Westview is destroyed, Wanda Maximoff, the Scarlet Witch, I haven't watched it. This isn't really about the Marvel comic plot of it all. I'm just trying to get to the 3-year part. So after the curse of the Scarlet Witch on the town is lifted, broken, Agatha's put in her own situation of a curse and glamour, and she's trapped in her own murder mystery crime police thriller.
Oh, yeah.
It's all rainy and dreary, and it's based off of a Swedish show, and she's Agnes. And the curse lasted for 3 years, and I just thought, really quick off the bat, the 3, the significance of 3, the law of 3, 3 times 3, Maiden Mother Crone, past, present, future, triple HEKA-TEA, the Morrigan, just off the bat, just the sacredness of 3, I thought was fucking brilliant.
I did too, and I thought that it really led into, I don't recall off the top of my head if this was the same episode or if it was early the next episode.
What?
But when they brought up the 3-mile radius where she said
second episode,
where she said that within a given 3-mile radius, wherever you are, you will find witchy enough people to form a coven. And I just think it's a really good tie, like the 3 years, the 3-mile radius, because I think like as witches, like so much of those idiosyncrasies in our lives tend to either come in threes, or there's something that's a multiple of three.
Yep.
Like, it definitely is a real phenomenon that follows us in our day-to-day lives, and I think that was a really good way of sort of showing that in a subtle manner.
Yeah. And not only that, I find that to be very true. That,
me too.
In any given 3-mile radius, there are other witches or witchy enough people, like, my entire life. Like, there have just been in any, 3 miles, there's witches. Like, and even in, my great-grandparents lived in a really, 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 really tiny small town in southern Washington, and even there I found that to be true.
Yeah.
So I was like, where the fuck did they get that? Like, and that's the thing, is there's a lot through the show where I was just left with, where the fuck did they get that? Like, who is on this show? Did they hire a bunch of witch consultants?
Right.
Like, who is working on this? Like, and then also, that, leads into, the whole witches, no matter how lame, basically, will connect and spark when they're around other witches.
And I think that's absolutely true.
100,000%. 100,000%. And I know so many other witches who would literally say the same thing.
Yeah.
That there's just, once we're all together,
there's
the tingle happens.
Yeah, there is a spark in the air, physically,
And it's more likely you're gonna make shit happen.
Yeah.
Like, put out street lights, or fucking maybe cause a car accident, or
Oopsie.
a storm will come in, or intensely when it wasn't supposed to be, or just any number of fucking shit will happen. Or you'll get really sensitive, and maybe you'll all have a really profound ghost experience or something. Like, there's just, there's something that happens when we're all together.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know we'll get into that when we discuss the movie, but I mean, in The Craft, for example, just really quick sidebar, when the whole thing, when they leave the witch shop, and they haven't started it, they haven't done anything yet, but now that they're together, when the guy's crossing the street, the homeless dude with the snake, and then they control the car, and the car veers, and the guy can't control it, and he runs over the dude, and kills him. It was because they finally all connected.
Yeah,
they
came together
enough, witchy enough, lit by Sarah being a natural witch, or very adept naturally to witchcraft, that she was. And then with them combined, it all came together, and it finally was a thing and so I find that to be very true.
Yeah. I would be really interested to see, the 4 of those girls' astrology.
I know. I've always wondered.
Me too.
I've always wondered. So the Witch's Road. As we kind of said, that was definitely, it's a metaphor. Obviously, there is no door that you summon.
Right.
But I want to talk about not just the road itself, but the saw.
Yes.
That was spellcraft.
Absolutely.
I remember when I watched it the first time, I felt the power of it physically. It was like I got electrocuted. It was like an electrical wave rushed through me. And I felt, and I could sense, every young witch, every child witch out there, every young witch who was not awake, every witch out there who wasn't awake, woke up. And I felt like it was very purposeful.
I did too.
It was created with intention of awakening all the witches out there to their power.
Absolutely.
I can't see, especially with the lyrics, I can't see how not.
Oh, yeah. No.
Like,
it was very, very intentional. Each line is so intentional.
yes,
I think, you know,
and the timing of the bell and its sequence, it just, there was powerful witchcraft happening in that moment. Yeah. It blew me away. And
every time that I hear the song, even now, it just sends that same shiver through my body.
Yeah. I mean, I've like incorporated it into my practice.
Oh, like, yeah, me too.
I do it to center. I do it to raise power. I do it as an oath, as a proud declaration, almost like a national anthem, exactly. Like an anthem of witchcraft. Like, I mean, because it's just also it's such an amazing song, and it's done in that ballad format, and it's done very. Like, so it's not like a pop song. It's not like, so it does have that anthem feel to
that,
it.
Ritualistic
feel.
Yeah.
And then you get into the lyrics, and I mean, oh my God.
I know. It blew me away.
Like, oh my fucking God. And I mean, it's like how much do you quote, because it's like you don't want to get sued by Disney, Marvel,
right?
Or banned by YouTube for copyright. But it was just incredible. The lyrics are just
they
hold everything like that. Especially, like, I love, like, you know, when it just opens with "Seekest thou the road to all that's foul and fair." And it's just immediately, it feels Wicked Witch. It feels like you're going into the woods. You feel like the fucking Queen from Snow White after she's transformed has just walked into the room and she's holding a torch and she's like this to you already and you're like, yeah, it's time to go. And she's not trying to kill you.
Right.
She has an apple and it's not trying to kill you. It's the apple is going to unlock all your inner power. And you're like, bitch, I want that apple.
Exactly.
And I'll protect you from the dwarves if they try to come for you, girl. I got you. Like, let's go. Maiden Mother Crone.
Exactly.
Yo. Like, and then, oh God. Just like, when it's like, talks about like burn and brew with Coven True and glory shall be thine. Like, there is that burn and brew. There is that you go through everything together.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good and bad, you're raising power together and working craft together, and shit happens. And shit's happening right now with my dining room light, with my chandelier. Which I think is kind of showing up on camera. It keeps flickering.
Yeah.
It never does this. It only... We have an active altar, like the altar that you see in our intro. That is our actual, like, set altar. It's our working altar. Yeah. So, for the show. So we are raising power every time we're doing this. So it's just funny because I'm just like, please don't blow up my chandelier. I just thought it was incredible. That beautiful song was just...
I mean, I would even venture to say it was just one of those moments, both in music and in cinema, that was just life-changing. And you're not the same once it ends as you were when you put it on. You know?
Not at all. Not at all. And I think that, you know, I do love, you know, what is it? Face your fear, a door appears, the time has come to go. When that line, what it recalled to me is that moment of just embracing the craft and never looking back. that I remember as a young child making. You know, just that moment where I was like, okay, I'm a witch, and what does that mean? And understanding that, and then being like, am I really gonna do this? Like, am I really gonna jump down this tunnel, this rabbit hole, But you just do it.
Yeah.
And
because when you realize that about yourself, there's no option not to.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. How could you, like, avoid it? I mean, I know people do, or try their best to, and they, like, shut themselves off. But for the most part, I mean, there's no getting away from it.
No.
Let's see. Oh, the fact that you can only really there's no going back.
There's only going through, which is really funny because that's exactly what we were just talking about.
Exactly. No going back, only going through. Like, it's just, you have to face your fear, and you're like, oh, am I going to summon something evil? Is something bad going to happen to me? Like, no, nothing's going to happen. Like, I mean, it can if you're reckless and you know, you're not doing what you need to be doing. Like, you can totally fuck all that up. But be responsible with the witchcraft. Be responsible with the summonings of spirits or anything you're doing. Be responsible and seekest thy knowledge, and you will be fine. Oh, and then the removing of the shoes.
Yes.
Just like the idea of grounding, of connecting to the earth, because we can draw magic. We can draw power up
through the ground,
from the ground. Yeah. And I just love that.
Me too. And then it also kind of goes into like that old practice from centuries back of removing your shoes if you're standing on holy ground.
Yep. To pay respect, homage, to not tread. The fact that the road is night.
Yes.
Forever night. And that just goes to the left-hand path.
Yeah. And then
working in shadow.
And then it's more dangerous if you stray from your path. And I really think that is an excellent analogy for us as witches too.
Agreed. And I love that. Again, there's something about, like, you can, like I say, you can be Catholic. Catholics practice magic, rosary prayer magic. Exactly. They fucking petition. They fucking do their shit. Fucking. Again, Jewish mystics, the Kabbalists, like they're not witches. There are a bunch of other things aside from the practice of magic and magical practice in itself that go into a witch versus someone else. And part of that, of so many things, is that we are the night.
Yes.
We are part of the night. We are born of the night. And I always think of in Bewitched and Dora, she's like, when she's trying to convince Samantha to come to this ritual witches thing for Halloween at the top of this volcano. And she says, we are the night, we are quicksilver, we are stars, we are stardust. Like, and I'm just like, oh, and I've always loved that. I've always just been like, yes. And that is part of being a witch, is we are of the night. And I think that, and we've had to work in the night traditionally because of secrecy, because of getting caught. So I just thought that was just wonderful, that it was just always nighttime on the road.
That covens share blessings and burdens alike.
Yes.
I have always found that to be 100% true.
Yes, and especially in the working of magic together or even separate, which is why I've always been wary about being in a coven. And why I've typically never stayed with a coven. Why I've always been like, oh, no. is because I don't want to be magically tied to other people that I don't know. Like, we're magically tied to each other. Like, we are, because we have done so much practice together, and we are our own little circle. Like, I wouldn't say coven. Coven's better, but coven to me is much bigger.
Yeah.
So, but it's just, you want to be very, like, careful, like, because it's great because you can draw magic from each other, and you can aid in each other's spells, and it's more beneficial and easier to do so when you have that magical tie, that bond.
Yeah.
But there's also sometimes, like, you know, someone can be in pain and you will get the pain too.
Yeah.
Like, because there's a psychic link there. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you're trying to do spell work, but they're in a mood, and maybe they're in such an intense mood that it's affecting what you're trying to do, even though you're at your home and they're at their home.
Right.
Like, there's just a lot you have to, because if you really know them, then you are able to really set up those barriers and boundaries. Mm-hmm. But I feel like the more people you have involved, you're not going to bond with everybody else.
Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to do it. So you could join a coven and there's 13 to 28, 30 of you, depending on the organization or whatever. And then, but you're only close to like 2.
Right.
And maybe you only see one of them outside, and everyone else you see only at Sabbath meetings.
Yeah.
Coven meetings. Well, but you have tied your magic with these people. You have joined a working pact in the coven. And I mean, a lot of covens maybe are different now, but I historically have always experienced where it was kind of like, no, you are bound with your coven.
Yeah.
Like, and you are doing you're doing spell work with your coven.
Yeah.
And you guys bring your shit once and twice a month, on the full moon and the new moon, or maybe just the full moon. But when you gather, that's when you bring whatever you're wanting to work on and do and put towards. And it's just too much. Yeah. But very much true. And then so next is the sigils. So this was a partial yes and no. So sigils are something, are designs, patterns, magically imbued, created, charms, symbols, whatever, designed, free-flowing from the witch who creates it. Mm-hmm. Now, but what is not true, obviously, is there's no, like, the witch doesn't forget anything. The spell cast with the sigil. That was clearly a plot marker for the show.
Yeah.
But that was true in terms of, like, what it does, and also to destroy the sigil, to break it, to destroy it, will end whatever the sigil was created for to do. But it's not just as simple as smashing it.
Right.
You still need to cleanse it. You still need to ritually, magically empty it out.
The energy
before you get rid of it. But it will, if you destroy it, it will end it. I will say in my experience, if, like, you just destroy it, then you release what is there. And if that sigil is an entity, if that sigil is a creature that has been summoned, you have now set it free from its intendedness. Exactly. So always, whether it's the sigil you created or one you come across, and let's say you move into a new home and you find the sigil there. Yeah. Magically, ritually disperse, remove before you destroy it.
And then the next thing that I wanted to talk about was the aspect of wind from an open window and blowing out candles when magical energy is being dispelled.
Yes. Oh my gosh. So for sure with me, I experience, if I do spell work and I open a window, if I got that window open.
Yeah. Or if you're outside.
Yeah, or outside. Like, the minute I do a spell, now it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
But whenever a spell has worked,
yes,
it has always been like I do the spell, and then wind will come in and put out the candles,
exactly,
or deeply flicker the fuck out of them, like to the point of almost going out. But usually, it just puts them out. And and then calms down again, like, and I have always just been like, okay, that's how I know my spell's gonna work, and it does. Like, it's never not. Like, it's never not. Like, but, and then when it doesn't, most of the time the spell, so, I mean, there are times it doesn't happen and the spell does work. Yeah. But a lot of times, I mean, if that window's open and there's no wind suddenly comes in after I complete my spell, I usually know that, okay, it's probably... The answer was no, yeah, not gonna come through. But yeah, I just thought that they had to have that, and then like they just were like, I love when shows and movies do that, where they're really like, do too, because there is a truth to it. Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's not as dramatic as shows and movies will make it, but there is a truth to it. Exactly. And that's why I was just like, fuck, they got that right. Exactly. I can't believe it.
And then it's like, what I've really noticed also is it's not always right away. Sometimes you do a spell, like your windows aren't even open, whatever, and then you go to bed. The next day, you walk out of your house, and a big wind comes, and you can just feel that it's not
an answer to your spell.
Yeah, yeah. That it's not just a natural wind.
No, there's a magic in it. You feel, natural wind. Yeah, you feel the magic in the wind, and you're like, okay.
I've experienced that many times.
Yeah, yeah. Spells need to marinate. 100% they need to marinate. I love the saying, cast your spell and then forget it. Cast your spell, send it out, and then forget about it. And a lot of people are like, well, I need, what do you mean? Put it out there and then let it be done. Put it out there and just put it out there as, so it is. Like, not that, it's going to be. I mean, you can word it however you want. Right. But make sure your intent in your mind is already happened. It's already there. You already have it. So you don't need to worry about it anymore, and forget it. Exactly. And just move on with your life. And because spells can happen quick, especially if you get, like, some deity involvement. Especially like Santa Morte.
You're right. Yeah.
She's one of those.
She does answer quick.
Super fucking quick. Yeah. So, but by and large, especially if you're just doing it yourself.
Especially if it's like something big that you're asking
Yes,
for.
A big ask, like a big spell, a like big petition, a big intent.
Something that is gonna be a new chapter in your life or change your life in some way. Those types of spells I've noticed really do take, time. They take several rounds of petitions and asking before you will see it. Yeah, you have to build, a lot of times you have to build that energy into it and make multiple, basically funnels of magic towards the goal. So that's repeated ritual, that's repeated magic crap, however you want to call it. I always just say I'm doing ritual, even if I'm literally sitting down to do just doing spell work. I still say I just say I'm doing ritual. Yeah, like when you sit down to ritual, like when you sit down to do what you do as a witch, sometimes you have to do it multiple times to build up that power. And you need the spell to kind of sit and marinate and then continue to collect the magic. Exactly. So I just thought that, that was great. I thought that was a great detail. It's kind of funny, we already started touching on this a little bit, but the next thing that we had written down was the line, death answers quickly.
Yes, yes. So, we have another, we'll get in, there's another on Aubrey Plaza as death and what death meant. But she was so clearly in so much of her presentation for most of it throughout Santa Morte.
And so vivid, so inspired, like such an homage to her as a deity and as a force of nature.
Yes,
you know,
and love that it was a Latina woman playing the character of Death, and loved, and the colors they used were black and green, and they always had her in black and green, and of course we're like, oh well, she was the Green Witch, original Green Witch, Earth, blah blah blah. But for Santa Muerte, it's actually very specific because the black is for Niña Negra, her aspect as Dark Death, Holy Death, Mother Death, Black Lady. She is the one that you use to connect with spirits and do all the necromantic stuff. She's also the one that you call on to hex and curse. I mean, well, all aspects. But she's the one that, like, if you need to do an exorcism, it's Niña Negra, followed by Niña Blanca, her white aspect that you would call on. Now, for green, it's Niña Verde, which is justice. And I just thought that her being Niña Negra representing and Niña Verde representing death and holy death and justice. Yeah. I thought was very telling and correct for the episode.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Also, can I just say, given those colors and that representation, I might have picked the right outfit to wear for this episode.
I agree. You're literally in the right outfit.
I am.
And then there was casting clockwise versus casting widdershins. So clockwise is, as we know, casting a magical circle or any type of raising a power in usually a positive direction, or however they want to put it, or protective direction, clockwise. Yeah. Widdershins, the witch's circle, the witch's round, is opposite. It's counterclockwise. And this is for banishing. You can do this to banish your circle. But you can also widdershins to do more baneful or active magic, dark magic, as you would call it. You can also do it just on its own as a way of raising power in a more, I guess, witchy, flying in the moon type feel versus in a meadow in the summer type feel, which I feel like clockwise is. And I just like that they, depending on the spell work, the magical work they were doing, they would either, if they were going in a circle, they would either do a clockwise or a widdershins, depending on what they were doing. So I just thought that was great.
Talk about the use of broomsticks through the show.
Yes. So witches in Italy, mostly men, were the ones accused and put on trial for witchcraft in Italy. But they would ride fennel stalks as, like, so big giant fennel stalks of fennel. We think of fennel as these bulbs with these signs, but the stalks actually will get really tall. Very big. And they would use these to fly on, and you know, those were their broomsticks, and they would talk about fighting bad witches in the fields to protect the harvest at night, and they would fly on fennel stalks. And so I thought that was great that they did that broom sharing ritual, passing a broom to the other, and then we don't fly brooms in a real way. We use them to fly astrally. We use them to fly through spirit worlds, but and for other purposes. Yes. But I do like that you know, they incorporated it, and that they used roots. That they used the roots. It wasn't just broomsticks, it was like nature's broomsticks.
Yeah, exactly. And then the moment with Teen/Billy, where it plays "You Should See Me in a Crown."
Yes.
I just thought that was very. I mean, I hate the word iconic, but sometimes there just isn't another word.
No, it's true, and it was iconic.
It was.
And for so many reasons, obviously, like, I guess if you're like a fan of WandaVision and all that, and the mythology of that, you're gonna fanboy out over that, because,
of course,
or fangirl, because now it's Billy Maximoff, and it's the Scarlet Witch's son, and he's got the crown that looks a lot like his mom's, and oh my god. But for me, it was Yeah, bitch, it's a faggot boy witch. It is a gay boy witch.
Exactly.
Like, there are so many of us. Most male witches out there are gay. They are. Like, it just, I cannot tell you. Almost every male witch I've ever met is gay. Maybe there's one straight guy, but then usually he's not even straight. He's like bisexual.
Yeah.
Like, and really bisexual.
Yeah.
Like, and so, like, it's queer men, and we're not, men in the craft are not spoken about enough, especially queer men. It's coded. So during the witch trials, it was the men who were put on trial were, either because they were related to somebody else who was accused of being a witch, like their wife or daughter or sister or whatever, or because they were men who subverted the traditional ideas of masculinity. They were practicing obscene and lascivious acts, debaucherous acts. They were gay.
Right.
Mostly they were gay. And we don't talk about that enough, or they were perceived to be gay, whatever. But usually, no, they were gay. They were usually found out to have usually done the act of sodomy. Like, it was usually like, it's done, you are, and we have proof. And on top of that, you're an agent of the devil, you're a witch, like, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Like, and that just kind of gets skirted over. And it's bullshit. It's bullshit.
Exactly. I mean, I think that there were so many male witches that were accused, but no one, especially in this context, this era, like, no one wants to talk about the male witches.
No.
Because we have this very, like, female-centric culture that's going on right now. And I think that, like, that's also something that's important, but I do think a lot of the discourse around witchcraft tends to be erasing the male witches who were also put to death.
Yes.
You know? I just think that there has been, like, a very cultural erasure of male witches in recent times, and so to just see the show that features a prominent character who is both a male witch and also an out gay male witch, I think that is culturally very important in this moment.
Yes, I agree. It's a representation that we have needed, and I think it needs to be out there.
Yes.
And because it's not really discussed. If you watch things about witches, documentaries about witches, almost every talking head they talk to that's a witch is a woman, and sometimes you'll watch something and they'll have one male witch who is gay. Yeah. And they are maybe talked to, like, briefly. Like, they have just, like, a brief moment where their feature, they've been interviewed through the whole thing. They were interviewed probably all day for hours. But then, like, maybe they only get a brief moment at the end or in the middle. And it's kind of shitty. And yes, during the witch trials, yes, it was a majority female, right? Yes. But witchcraft and witches and being a witch is not the witch trials.
No.
It goes way before and way beyond that.
Exactly.
But they're like, oh, well, because it was mostly women who were persecuted during the witch trials, it's therefore
a female issue, and it's not.
It's not.
And witch is not a gender-specific term either. I mean, we have touched on this. Warlock fart.
Fart.
But I really feel very passionately about the fact that witch is not gender specific. Witch is about your relationship to your magic, and if you follow them, your deity.
Right,
like, that is so much bigger than anything else.
Right. And so I just love that the witch to watch out for was
a boy.
Was a boy and was gay and was a witch, not a warlock, a witch.
Exactly.
Like,
I loved that.
Looking at you, Ryan Murphy, taking the Hawthorne boys and making them all warlocks and just and then making them kind of pitiful and it was just. It was gross. It was gross.
Yeah.
Shame on you, Ryan Murphy.
Yeah, I agreed. I mean, we'll definitely get into that subject as well. But that was probably the one part of that season of American Horror Story that I just did not care for, was the whole warlock storyline.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And then the whole you were cut off from the divine feminine, and you're not as in touch with it. And I'm like, bitch, Ryan Murphy clearly didn't do your research, because you would know that queer men that were considered touched by the divine feminine and were the only men allowed to be of service and work in the temples of most goddesses, especially goddesses of witchcraft.
Exactly. I mean, how many families do you know that have magic that runs through their DNA, but it's usually always the gay ones of the boys who get it, and the straight boys don't.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a pattern that you can identify through history that can't really be ignored, and I just think it needs to be talked about just as much as female witches do.
Correct. And so, yay for Billy Maximoff /teen /Wiccan.
Exactly. And yay for boy witches everywhere.
Yay for boy witches everywhere. Not going to go through all the cards, but the tarot, heavy incorporation of the tarot, I thought was great.
I loved it.
Not all the definitions were correct, or they were only partially right, but by and large, it was pretty
fact
spot
that it was
on.
featured so prominently, I really enjoyed.
It was just so great. Don't feel guilty about your talent. You survived like witches have been doing all along. And I think that goes to the fact that sometimes as a witch, you gotta get a little messy. You gotta get a little wicked.
That is true.
Sometimes you gotta make the hard choice. And never feel guilty about the power that you have.
No.
Don't let anyone shame you.
That is your goddess-given power.
Exactly. It is deep within you, in every part of you, and celebrate it.
Yes. Oh, yes. One line we also wrote down that we wanted to have a discourse about was the last one there is a nice person.
Yes. And again, this just ties back into, as witches, sometimes we have to get a little bit wicked.
Exactly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. No. Sometimes everything's light and dark. It's a balance. And sometimes you have to play in the dark.
Yeah. And I think that it's important to acknowledge your dark tendencies and revel in your darkness a little bit.
Yes.
At the same time as valuing your lighter aspects of yourself, I think that it's just something that you don't want to deny either side of what makes up who you are.
Exactly. Let's see. So just kind of briefly, the left-hand path, every time when they were like, what road do we take? Every time it was always left. It was always the left-hand path, which as we know is also what it's called, to follow the occult or follow witchcraft. It's to take the left-hand path. And honestly, when I go through a corn maze, I always choose the left. And it's never steered me wrong. So I just like that there was this, when it was going through this, Wizard of Oz, going through the Yellow Brick Road type, through the forest thing, it was always taking a left. Yes. It was always, the path of the witch was the left-hand path.
Yeah. I think it would be really interesting to go on. I mean, this is so off topic a little bit, but I think that's, related to what we're talking about. But I think it would be really interesting to go on a road trip, like without a map, without any like directionals, and just take every left and see where it leads you.
Agreed.
It'd be really fun. Anyways. Next line we wrote down was, Liliana's line, I loved being a witch.
Yeah, I really love being a witch. I just want to make sure that is when she said that cut right through me.
Oh yeah, me too.
Sobbed. Yeah. But I want that to be my last words. Like on my deathbed.
Put that on my headstone.
Put that on, make that my epitaph. Yeah. Like, I really loved being a witch. Like, I think when she said it yes, it was a sad moment, and she was sacrificing herself, but
she was also embracing her power.
Yeah.
And like, that was something that clearly throughout the entire show she had always struggled with.
Yeah.
And so I really love that in that moment she truly embraced it in the most full sense, and it was her last and final act, and I think that was such a beautiful conclusion to her storyline.
Oh, it was incredible. And then lastly, just again, like the aspects of death that were shown, again, green and black, Niña Negra, Niña Verde. But then when Agatha's son, when she comes to collect Agatha's son, she's torch-bearing.
Yes.
Which, HEKA-TEA. And again, it just goes back to synchronicities, deities, and other aspects drag, depending on where they are. But I just thought that her appearance has been so Santa Muerte throughout it, but you have this brief moment where she's clearly HEKA-TEA, she's torch-bearing, and I thought it was incredible.
Yeah.
And I just loved it. I loved the whole show.
Me too. And I just think that moment really sort of creates this like marriage of the two deities, which so many people, myself included, see those two deities as, sort of two sides of the same coin, if you will. And so I really enjoy that detail because it just creates a link between the two that I thought was very, very true and very honest, and I loved it.
So obviously we give this a full moon.
Yes.
Complete, shining bright, frost or beaver
moon.
And let us know what you guys think. Yeah. What was the witchy aspects that you guys enjoyed? Let us know. Obviously, if you like the episode, please like it, share it, subscribe to our channel.
And we will be back at ya at the next time the moon is full or new.
Yeah, so I believe it will be the full moon.
It will.
So we will see you at the next full moon, and we'll be all ready for Yuletide, and it'll be cute. Enjoy your harvest home.
Exactly.
And get as fat as you need to.
Exactly. We will certainly be doing the same.
Exactly. Have a great, great time, you guys. Goodbye.